I used to think that nothing truly strange could happen in a place designed to feel temporary, because when people don't plan to stay long, they stop paying attention to the details. And that's probably why I ignored the small inconsistencies at first when I took the night monitoring job for a newly constructed residential complex on the edge of the city, because on paper, it sounded simple. Sit in a small security office, watch the cameras log anything unusual, and call maintenance. If something malfunctioned, the building wasn't even fully occupied. Yet, only a few tenants scattered across dozens of identical units. Long, empty hallways, lights that stayed on all night, and elevators that rarely stopped on the same floor twice. And from the beginning, there was something off about how quiet it was. Not the normal quiet of an empty building, but the kind that felt padded, like sound. Itself was being absorbed before it could travel. And during my first few nights, I convinced myself it was just my imagination, because the job required silence, concentration, and long hours alone. But then the cameras started showing things that didn't line up with what I could hear or see from my desk, because I would watch a hallway camera show a light flickering on the 4th floor, even though the electrical log insisted the circuit was stable. And when I checked the floor myself, the lights were steady, as if nothing had happened. And that was the first time I felt the building correcting itself, as if it didn't want to be caught, behaving strangely. And as the nights went on, the corrections became more frequent, because a door would appear open on camera and closed when I arrived. Or an elevator would show movement without ever making a sound. And the logbook they gave me already had pages filled in from before my employment notes, written in the same neat handwriting, describing issues that mirrored what I was seeing. Now, doors opening without records, footsteps heard where no tenants were registered, and something referred to only as timing errors, which I didn't understand until the night I realized the clocks on each floor were no longer synchronized, because I noticed the lobby clock said 2:11 a.m., while the security monitor timestamp read 2:19 a.m., and my phone said 2:00 a.m. And when I checked the building system, it listed the time as something else entirely. And that was when I started feeling the hours stretch, because some nights felt like they lasted forever, and others ended abruptly, as if time itself was skipping forward, and the building never acknowledged it, and neither did management whenever I called, because they always responded with the same calm voice, telling me to note the issue and continue monitoring. And it wasn't until a tenant finally spoke to me about it that I realized this wasn't just my problem, because a woman from the 7th floor came down one night, looking confused and exhausted, and asked me if the elevators had been stopping on random floors for anyone else. And when I asked her what she meant, she said sometimes it takes her to floors that don't exist on the directory. Floors with hallways that look unfinished, but lived in lights, on furniture, silhouettes behind frosted doors. And when the elevator opens, she feels like she's interrupting something. And that was the exact word she used, interrupting. And before I could ask more, she apologized for bothering me, said she must be tired, and left. And the next night, her unit showed as vacant in the system, with no record of her ever being assigned to it. And when I checked the cameras, there was no footage of her entering or leaving the building at all. And that's when I stopped trusting the logs entirely, because they weren't tracking reality, they were enforcing it. And the building seemed to decide what was allowed to be remembered and what wasn't. And over time, I noticed patterns, because the same few camera angles would glitch at the same times, every night, and the same floors would briefly appear occupied before reverting to empty. And sometimes, I would catch glimpses of movement that didn't belong to anyone, a shadow that paused when the camera adjusted, or a shape that stood too still to be human. And whenever I focused too hard on those feeds, something would distract me. A radio burst, static, a sudden maintenance alert, or a call from management asking if everything was normal. And the more attention I gave the wrong things, the more the building pushed back, until one night the power went out everywhere, except the security office, and all the monitors switched to a single camera feed, showing a hallway I didn't recognize long. Narrow, dimly lit, with doors on both sides, each marked with numbers that repeated instead of ascending. And at the end of the hallway was a door labeled with my name, and before I could react, the radio crackled, and a voice that sounded like it had learned speech from recordings rather than conversation calmly asked me to confirm my location. And when I didn't answer, the hallway camera zoomed in slightly, as if the building itself was focusing, and my office door clicked once like it was testing the lock. And I realized then that the job wasn't about watching the building, it was about being watched by it. Because everything I had logged, every inconsistency, every ignored warning had been feeding it information about me and my routines and my reactions. And when the power returned, the monitors reset and the hallway was gone. And management called to tell me the outage was scheduled and thanked me for my continued reliability. And the next day, I found a new page in the logbook, written in that same neat handwriting, describing my behavior during the outage, noting hesitation, compliance, and awareness level, as if I were just another system being monitored. And I knew then that quitting wouldn't be simple, because the building had already learned me. And sure enough, when I tried to resign, the email bounced back undeliverable, and my access badge still worked. And my name still appeared on the schedule no matter what I did, and the nights grew heavier, like the air was thick with expectation. And the building began anticipating my movements, lights turning on just ahead of me, doors unlocking before I reached them. And sometimes, when I sat perfectly still, I could feel something listening through the walls, waiting to see what I would do next. And the final night I ever worked, there wasn't dramatic, or loud, or violent. It was quiet and procedural, because the monitors displayed a message instead of camera feeds, telling me my monitoring period was complete, and thanking me for my contribution, and instructing me to remain seated. And for the first time since I started the job, the building didn't feel empty. It felt full, like every space was occupied, and aware, and leaning inward. And I understood that the real horror wasn't being trapped inside it, but realizing that even if I left, part of me would stay logged, recorded, and reused. Because places like that don't just observe people, they practice being them. And I did eventually leave, or at least I think I did because I don't work there anymore. And yet sometimes, when I walk past buildings late at night, I notice lights turning on in sequence as I pass, or elevators moving without passengers, and I get the uneasy feeling that something somewhere recognizes my timing and is quietly adjusting itself to match. And that's why I no longer check security cameras or stay in places that feel too orderly, because I know now that some structures aren't built to house people. They're built to learn them, and once they finish, they don't need you there anymore. They just need you remembered. I don't know exactly when the feeling followed me home, because at first, it was subtle. The way certain nights felt slightly out of alignment, like the silence arrived too early. Or the dark lingered longer than it should have, and I started noticing that my apartment had begun behaving the way the complex once did, with lights turning on in rooms I hadn't entered yet, and my phone clock drifting a few minutes behind the microwave, and my watch never quite agreeing with either of them, and I tried to dismiss it as stress from too many night shifts, even though I hadn't worked there in weeks. But then I found myself waking up at the same time every night, without fail. 2:17 a.m. exactly, and I wouldn't feel startled or afraid, just alert, like something had gently tapped the inside of my mind to let me know it was time to pay attention. And every time I woke up at that hour, I felt watched, not from any specific direction, but from the space itself. Like the room was aware that I was conscious and waiting to see what I would do next. And I made the mistake of testing it one night by staying completely still, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, holding my breath just to see if the moment would pass. And instead, the air seemed to tighten, and the faint hum I'd grown used to hearing at night shifted in pitch like a system recalibrating. And somewhere in the apartment, something clicked, and I realized I had failed whatever unspoken expectation had been placed on me. Because the next night, when I woke at 2:17, the door to my bedroom was open, even though I always closed it. And beyond it, the hallway light was on, casting a long shadow that didn't quite match the shape of the furniture. And that was when I understood that this wasn't about haunting or entities or anything that simple. It was about routines and responses. Because whatever had been observing me didn't want fear. It wanted predictability. And the more I reacted, the more the environment adjusted. And over the following weeks, my life began to feel like a loop. Because the same moments repeated with slight variations. My commute took the same amount of time, regardless of traffic conversations, ended with the same phrases, even when I tried to change them, and strangers would sometimes pause mid-sentence, like they were waiting for me to say something specific. And when I didn't, they would continue, as if nothing had happened. And the worst part was that none of it felt wrong enough to justify panic. It just felt managed, like my life had been placed on a track, and every deviation was gently corrected. And I started finding notes in places I didn't remember putting them. Reminders written in my handwriting, telling me to lock doors at certain times, to avoid certain routes, to sleep with the lights off. And at first, I thought I must have written them during moments I couldn't remember. But then I noticed the language was slightly off, like it understood my habits, but not my thoughts. And the instructions were always framed as suggestions rather than commands. And that made it more unsettling because it implied cooperation, not control. And the more I followed them, the smoother things felt, like the world was rewarding compliance. And when I ignored them, things became inconvenient, not dangerous, just irritating enough to push me back into line. Until one evening when the power in my apartment went out, and my phone screen lit up with a notification from an app I didn't have installed, showing a familiar black and white interface with a timestamp and a simple message. Reading monitoring resumed, and my heart dropped. Not because I was scared, but because I was tired. And I finally understood that leaving the building hadn't ended anything. It had simply changed the scope, because whatever system had been watching me, there had learned enough to continue elsewhere, and it didn't need walls or cameras anymore, because it had my patterns and my timing and my responses, and it could rebuild the same conditions anywhere. And that was when I decided to do something unpredictable, not dramatic, just inconsistent, because I realized the one thing it couldn't account for was intent that didn't follow habit. So I started changing small things, staying up past the usual time, taking random routes, turning lights on and off without reason, waking up and going back to sleep. And for a while it worked. The notes stopped appearing. The environment felt less responsive, like I had confused it. And then, one night, I woke up, and it wasn't 2:17, it was 3:04. And that terrified me more than anything else, because it meant it was adapting, and I was no longer ahead of it. And the next day, I received an email from an address, with no name, no subject, just a single line of text, thanking me for the extended observation period, and informing me that Phase 2 would begin shortly. And I didn't know what Phase 1 had been, but I knew I hadn't consented to any of it. And yet, deep down, I also knew consent had never been required, because this wasn't something that asked permission. It identified opportunities and filled them. And the scariest realization came slowly over time, as I noticed how many people lived the same way I did, waking at the same times, following invisible routines, reacting to subtle corrections without questioning them. And I began to wonder how many of us were being monitored, not individually, but collectively, like data points, feeding a larger system, learning how people move, think, comply, and adapt. And sometimes late at night when everything feels too quiet, I imagine vast structures, not buildings, but processes running beneath the surface of everyday life, observing patterns, smoothing irregularities, and practicing humanity until it no longer needs us to be present at all. And that's why I'm telling this now, not as a warning, but as a record. Because if things start feeling too orderly, too responsive, too perfectly adjusted to your behavior, don't assume it's comfort or coincidence, because some systems don't want to scare you. They want to understand you. And once they do, they don't need to watch anymore. They just need to continue. And if this narration ever starts looping or ending the same way each time, if you find yourself waking at a specific hour without knowing why or noticing lights turning on just ahead of you, then it may already be happening. And the worst part is, you won't know when the monitoring ends, because by then, you'll already be part of what it learned.